Hello.
Hello. Hey,
Hello.
hey, hey. Hey, everyone. Good to see you here. Beautiful. So let's say hello to the audience as well. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to our live session about navigating the return to the office. These days, we hear from everyone, not only in Canada, not only in the States, in the United States, but also from our clients and friends in Europe and other parts of the world that this is a big topic. And you asked us question about how to navigate the return, not only from the employee's perspective, but also from the leadership perspective, from the organization's perspective, from the human resources perspective. So we brought a panel of experts together, and I will introduce them shortly to answer some of your questions at our best capacity and also to discuss how do we do this together. Okay. And so we have about an hour, and this session is broadcasted live streamed in on LinkedIn and YouTube. There were some questions about it, so if you have some connection problems on LinkedIn, YouTube is also available. YouTube streaming is also available. So as the corporate world transitions back to the office, the prospect of returning to the physical space of working is met with a spectrum of mixed emotions. We know that we have clients that are speaking with us, and some of us have full-time positions. And together, we will be discussing this with our expert panel group. And who do I have with me today? Monica Navasquez, who is an human resources executive, HR executive, and also a career coach and a Flow graduate, Flow Coaching Institute graduate. And I have Chris Henwood, who is a marketing executive and leadership coach and also a Flow graduate. I have Roxanne Higgins, who is a head of people and culture working in Toronto. And she's also a leader coach, and she is about to finish the module 6, yes, Flow professional coaching certification program, but she has been coaching for years now. And I have Candy Ashby, who is a Flow faculty and health coach, certified health coach and well-being coach. And we've been together with Candy for some years now, right, Candy? So before we dive into the questions, the titles to discuss, I would like to share some news about the Flow Coaching Institute. Maybe if you're following the Flow Coaching Institute, we have a big flash sale going on, Black Friday flash sale going on. So if there are people among the audience listening and watching us right now and thinking about becoming a certified professional flow coach through ICF, this is the time to enroll. We have really very good discounts for only a limited time until November 30th. And then we will be back to our regular fees and tuitions. And those of you might be following us through our website. So the website to view those discounts is flowcoachinginstitute.com, flowcoachinginstitute.com. And there you will see our programs as well. You will be able to view our programs as well that lead to both life coaching, business coaching, or executive coaching, career coaching certification through the international coaching certification. And we also have some continuing coaching education programs apart from level 1 and level 2 ICF certifications, such as like creative coaching, expressive arts coaching certification program. So go to the website www.flowcoachinginstitute.com to view the Black Friday sale and also to look at the program options that we offer if you're interested in becoming a professional certified coach, and also maybe continue with some continuing education. Wonderful. So we have been coaching and mentoring and listening to a lot of people from various organizations, from public government organizations to privately owned profit organizations, or even nonprofit organizations, or like universities and colleges. Everyone has this in common. So how do we navigate this, right? And we gathered some of the titles. Can you bring? I'm just, can you bring the question to the? Yeah. So one of the discussion topics is like, um, this is big, and there are a lot of people these days working across continents. This morning, I was leading a diversity, equity, and inclusion workshop with an international company, and one employee is sitting in Toronto, whereas the other employee is sitting in Dubai. So how do we navigate this, right? And they have employees physically working in Dubai, physically working here. So what do we do? Do preferences for returning to the office change vary based on factors such as age, culture, industry, location, which brings up the question of who desires a return to the office or versus who prefers remote work. So, Chris, any idea? We were discussing traffic this morning, right? Traffic in Toronto.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so what I've noticed is there does seem to be an age connection to start with. And I think students that are entering the workforce for the first time, who've had maybe studied remotely for the past few years, may not feel the need to be in a physical workspace much past their
Mhm.
onboarding period. They may also be more technically savvy and able to navigate the technology to work in a remote way. So that's the first thing I've noticed. I also think people with maybe younger families that have a requirement to pick up at night and drop off in the morning may need the flexibility that they desire to be remote as well. And then, people that are maybe a little older and kids are out of the house and they're used to working in 5 days a week in a workspace tend to want to be in the workspace more from what I'm observing. But I think there are certainly outliers to that. And then the other piece is geographical. So one of the things I share is during COVID, we had an office in Edmonton, Alberta come up for lease. And at that time, everyone said, "Yeah, no, we don't need an office. We can work from home." It was a lot of the folks were salespeople or customer service, so they thought it was completely fine. They now want to be back in the office, and what they're missing is the personal connection of being around people. And in Edmonton, it's a shorter commute. It's probably a 15 or 20-minute commute for most people, so for them, it's fine. But on the flip side, we have an office in Toronto, the Greater Toronto area. And in that environment, it could be 2 to 3 hours of commuting both ways each day. So where your office is becomes important. When you're spending that much time commuting, it definitely impacts what people do outside of workplace and work-life balance. So I think the geography and the physical setting of where your workspace is plays into it as well.
Thank you, Chris. There are a lot of factors that are influencing our preferences, our choice to work, whether physically or remote. That's what I'm hearing, and I'm curious what Monica would say. Monica, what would you say about this as the human resources, person who is
Yeah,
meeting and greeting all those requests and demands and
I think what is important to keep in mind is that one size does not fit all, right? Even from one generation, some people might crave the sense of belonging. That's what we crave, really, not the office, the brick and mortar, right? We crave those events where we can discuss things openly, have coffee chats, and have the social environment. right? Right now we have five different generations in the workplace, from baby boomers to Gen Zs coming into the workplace. So how do we match those needs, and what's the motivation for each one of them? I feel from the human perspective, we all need to feel that we belong, and part of creating the culture is how do we, as talent departments or human resources departments and leaders and managers, create that sense of belonging, that sharing, that sense of community as well, if you wish, that helps us remain engaged and connected to our employers, right? So we have, as human beings, that social need to belong, to share, to have conversations outside of just work and objectives and deliverables. But a lot of times we go to the office just to be connected on emails and doing Zooms. So how are we craving or creating purposefully those events where we highlight our culture, our sharing, our sense of belonging, and our communities when we are at the office?
Mm,
So being mindful about that is very critical. It's not just going to the office because of the office. And also, how do we share that there's a balance between I trust you, I know that you're performing and delivering, and you know what you need to deliver on. And at the same time, you have the flexibility that you require to deal with the demands of life, right?
mm, that's beautifully said. Thank you, Monica. That takes us to the next question, indeed, or not next title. Like, what impact does this shift have on both the employer's desired level of effectiveness, organizational culture, engagement level, versus like employees, or together with employees' well-being, work and life balance, and overall productivity? And I would like to ask this question to you, Roxanne, because you have been dealing with all of this since the beginning of pandemic, right?
I have been, and I was in another company right at the beginning of the pandemic, doing the planning, pre-pandemic planning, as we started to see the shutdowns across the world. And it's really it's very interesting to watch, because most employers are traditional employers where you have, as Chris was saying, you have an office and everybody shows up and you have your time. You may have flexible hours, but you have your time that you show up, and everybody looks around and gets to see who's in, who's not, who's on vacation. And we can all tell that. And now we jumped into the pandemic where everybody's gone and we are just staring at our computers all day. So that has been a really big shift for leadership, to think, how do I manage my workforce when I can't see them? And we've always had some people that have been well, not always, but as technology has grown, we've had some people who've been traditional remote workers, and watching them come in maybe once a year. Pre-pandemic, it was magical. They felt connected. I didn't know you were so tall. Like, they could talk about certain things. So there is that magic and that connection about being together and seeing everyone together. There is that importance around that engagement, and we engage very well on social media. We engage very well face to face. I think it's much better face to face, because you're seeing and communicating, you're seeing the whole person. You're seeing the hand gestures, which is I'm doing right now. It's very hard to see on when we're looking at digital communication. So it's really about bringing people together, and how do we go from the old way of we were always together, or most of us were always together, and then that unknown period, it was quite traumatic that nobody was together and no one was supposed to be together. Remember, we're talking really about more office spaces. There were factories and hospitals and so many other things that needed to do in-person work, and great thanks to all of those people. But now, as we transition back, people are saying, oh, I was doing just fine working remotely. Why are you expecting me in? But it's that engagement that when you see people getting together, it's magical. I was speaking with a manager yesterday who had a direct report. He's in Toronto, and he had a direct report in the US, and they just happened to arrange it that this person would come up and they would meet. And this manager was so happy because this was the first time they did an in-person one-to-one meeting. And it was transformative, and he learned so much more about the person, although he had known this person remotely for 3 years. So it's really about that engagement piece, which is what a lot of leadership wants to see.
Amazing. Thank you, Roxanne. Makes a lot of sense. And the other question that we received is about, again, productivity and focus and workplace engagement. But specifically about remote work, and if, like, remote work had any effect on productivity, focus, and workplace engagement. And Kenda, I know you've been coaching people since the beginning of the pandemic, and we have been doing the emotional resilience program together to help people cope up with the stress and resilience of, or isolation of, remote work and all that. So what would you say about this?
So people, there's becoming a realization that life is never the same after a major life event than it was before. So we're kind of navigating a new normal, a new culture. Remote work increased productivity. What happened was, where we would stop and talk to somebody on our way to the washroom or grabbing a coffee, that didn't happen anymore. Meetings started to be scheduled over lunch hours or lunch periods. Work-life balance kind of did a shift for most people, because at 5 o'clock, you'd get up from your desk and you'd leave the office like everyone else, and you had time during that drive to decompress. So what I am finding is people are not scheduling lunches, they're not taking breaks, they are working on one last email at 5 o'clock, which leads them to 7 o'clock, and they're losing their work-life balance. Focus is also very tough, because within your office, you could always close your door. Now there's all sorts of new productivity things like Slack, instant messaging, text, whatever your company is working with. So we work a lot on distraction management, how to handle those distractions to be able to focus in on your work. So as productivity has gone up in some ways, it's taken away from work-life balance, and it's taken away from focus. So I work with a lot of people to learn to shut down at 5 o'clock or at the end of their 8 hours, however their flex time is. And also, I work with a lot of leaders on how to bridge that gap in engagement, where they have, team building sessions in person. If they are online across global companies, a lot of them are now doing social hours online. So people get just to meet in a meeting room, and they're having a cocktail or a coffee, and they're having a chat with other people to re-engage their workforce.
Thank you, Candy. What I'm hearing is that, from all of you, there is a lot of flexibility in remote work, and yet boundaries are different than before. So how do we set boundaries, or what are the new norms for defining our boundaries? And remote work also means that we work with different time zones. So the hours are different too. So how do you adjust to that, right? So that's the question, which leads us to maybe understanding the rationale behind. The next question is about understanding the rationale behind summoning employees back to the office, managers, general managers, human resources, they call their employees back to the office. What is the reasoning behind? And I would like to ask this to Roxanne, to you, because you've been there from the beginning and witnessed the shift and steered the shift indeed.
In the beginning, it was, the leadership and management would look around and say, we have all the space that we're paying for, and no one's in it. And that's a big cost. And as a result, you see many people, as Chris was talking about, have given up their offices. So there's a lot of office space in large metropolitan areas that is either still being leased and there are very few people in it, or it's available for lease. So I think there's that, oh, we've got this space, why aren't we filling it aspect. And that there's also that, can we get back to the old norm? Can we come back in person? And as well as that engagement. During the pandemic, we had that great resignation that happened. And I had never really seen a clear reason why that had happened. But I always wondered, was that the lack of engagement? When I'm, getting a cup of tea or walking down the hallway, we have those, they call them collisions. We're not actually colliding, but we have those moments where we speak with people and we talk with them. How was your weekend? We don't do as much of that when we're on social media. We might, how's your weekend? Okay, good. And then we jump right into it. So it's really about having that energy, that synergy that happens when we are together. And I think that's behind what's behind a lot of let's get back together. Are we missing something by being separated? There's also the old concept of, we used to call it FaceTime, which I know you can get on your iPhone and you can see someone, but being in office gives the illusion that someone is actually working. So they were in their cubicle, and that they were, if I could see them, they are at work, so they are working. And I think that pandemic in many ways has blown that up, because I've seen statistics where people who work from home are much more productive. Most people are. And in one of the companies that I worked for at the beginning of the pandemic, most people could easily adjust. The vast majority of people could adjust to remote work, working from their home environment and enjoying it and being more productive. There were very few and they tended to be people who had worked in the workforce for many, many years, who could not adjust, who needed that routine of coming into the office in order to collaborate with their colleagues and have that motivation to work. So most people did adjust well, but just because someone is in office doesn't mean they're doing work, and doesn't mean they're actively involved in work. And having those hallway conversations with people are very important, because that's team building, that builds trust, that builds open and honest communication, getting to know people. And so there is that factor as well. So I think that's what's behind the move back to the office, though it is not always upon sound reasoning. There's that balance that Monica was talking about as well. It's one size does not fit all.
Thank you. And so we have a new question. So many people work in busy open plan offices with a lot of noise, all on webinars on the other part of the world anyway. The world often also seems oriented to extroverts and against introverts. Not everyone wants that level of interaction. Chris, what would you say about it?
Oh, yeah. I love this question. So part of what I do as a business is helping other businesses create spaces that attract people back into the workplace. And there's two major challenges you face. One is, if you have an organization with a very traditional type of workplace that has high-walled cubicles and everything is sound dampened, that gets in the way of collaboration and doesn't lend to a lot of good reasons why you would want people back in the workspace to create those happy collisions and to create incidental learning experiences. On the flip side, a lot of businesses went to a fully open, the Google model, as they call it, where it's a fully open concept office, and there are very few workspaces that are walled in, and very few places where you can have a silent room. And you have to bring both of those pieces together. So a lot of businesses are reconfiguring their workspace to meet in the middle, where traditional high-walled cubicle businesses are putting in more soft seating, more areas to collaborate, but also keeping areas where you can get away and you can join in on a conference call without being distracted or distracting others around you. And then the businesses that took advantage of the Google effect and had very open, very collaborative spaces, they're now adjusting so that they can create separate spaces where people can go and get away in a quiet room and actually spend time and have a meeting without being distracted. And what has been hot over the past couple of years is self-contained phone booths that are literally a piece of furniture that you put in the workspace, and businesses will put in 3 or 4 or 5 of those so that there is a place to get away. But I think you have to be very conscious of what are you asking employees to come back into, and what worked pre-COVID does not work post-COVID. In the hybrid environment, in bringing people back into the workspace. So all of these things are critical to think about what does my workspace design look like? And it's a place that's inviting and empowering and enabling people to collaborate and communicate and have happy collisions, but also give them a place to be in a quiet room when they need to be during the day.
That's amazing. And also, as you know, to build on what you just shared and to build on our participants audience's comment, like that brings us the question of or the issue of creating not only policy wise but also space wise more inclusive spaces, more inclusive workspaces where not only introverts, but also we have a lot of people with ADHD or ADD or hyperactivity or some other neurodivergent issues. How do we create more inclusive spaces to accommodate different needs of our people is a question that needs to be answered before we call the people into the office.
Yeah,
so thank
absolutely.
you for this comment. And one of the questions that we received was, from our audience, was a challenge to, what to say, how to communicate people, employees, and when we call our people back, and also in guiding re-entry, how do you provide coaching support to the employees who might have some mixed emotions, right, Candy?
Absolutely, Talia. Absolutely. So I would say that in the past 6 months, that at least 50% of the people I've been coaching, a lot of it is re-entry, where they don't understand the need for it due to their positions. Some departments are still siloed. So it's really, helping them work on things that'll make that adjustment to back to the office easier and more streamlined, and to be able to have that productive conflict conversation with management and with sometimes it's with their spouses, and they have shifted everything they've done from March of 2020 to now. Daycare might be different, roles may be different, things that happened in the home might be different. So, and they've accepted a new normal that's now going to change again. So we talk about, steps that they can take. A lot of companies are being really good and saying, giving them a month or 2 months to let them know, as of this date, we're going to start with, 2 days a week. As of this date, we're going to be at 4 days a week. And as of this day, we're going to be, full time in the office, so that they're able to kind of gauge and change things as they go through. But the support is really looking at all the different ways that life has changed since March 2020 to how do we get back to that? Or how do we find a better way to get back and support also some of them have had this new great work-life balance, like Chris had mentioned, being able to go pick up the kids after school, and also revisiting your values. I do a lot of work with self-awareness, and we revisit our values. Is this something that, is a non-negotiable? Are you willing to go back to the office? Is another question. Is this something that you have that, you might have to work around? Is it another position you're looking for? Or is it, yes, I really, I love my company, I love my job. How can I make this work? So there's all these different questions, and really with everyone, it's different.
Thank you, Candy. So when we coach people on re-entry, we really should help them understand their resources and possibilities, also what is available to them.
Yeah.
And I always say also, like, just first gain clarity on what you want and what is available to you, and also negotiate. Sorry.
And also, Talia, for companies, they need to really understand the why behind the return to the office. If I think from the leadership perspective, all of the organizations want more collaboration, better innovation, and sharing ideas. They want sense of belonging and engagement. Now, is that returning to the office 5 days a week gonna do it, or can you have a hybrid model, or can you have a remote model with the specific events to create that sense of belonging, that information sharing and innovation and whatnot? So think outside of the box, be creative. Part of the challenge that the whole COVID brought, and now the return to the office, is it caught all of us out of guard without the capabilities to engage and motivate and lead in a remote setting. So how have we, as leadership and HR departments and talent departments, have been preparing our managers and leaders to be effective leaders in this new environment? And is that still a possibility that you develop those capabilities instead of just saying, let's all go back and go back to old ways, right?
Yes, I agree. I agree. Oh, okay. We have a new question. So, if there are people who do not want to go back or who do not want to stay home, how do you balance it as a manager? What would you recommend? Um, Monica, do you want to continue?
Yeah. So again, not a size doesn't fit everybody. There's a lot of people that move outside of the city because it's more affordable to live outside. So what's the commute time? What's the end objective to having this person back in the office? What do you want to achieve as a leader? Is that performance? Do you need to be more clear about expectations and deliverables from this person? Do you need more information sharing or better communication? So define the clear objectives with your employee and what's the best way to obtain those things, either in a hybrid setting or in an office setting or a fully remote setting. And what can you create that is creative, right, for this person? Now, part of the challenge, we being HR practitioners, we know that we want to have kind of equality and policies for everybody. So be mindful of what precedent you're creating and what differences you are creating, and in which occasions, as an organization, you're willing to accommodate, right? And also understand that you might be losing this employee and this talent if you cannot accommodate for certain reasons. If the policy that you have overarching in the company is so strict that you cannot do a different thing for one employee, you might be risking losing him down the road, or you might end up with an employee that is still working but not fully engaged, right?
I mean, having been, like, in the leadership positions, executive positions, I mean, maybe making peace with also, like, you cannot make everyone happy. That's very, like, I wish that was possible, but that's not possible. So there will be people with always, like, further needs or further wants. But what is the optimal balance? Like, maybe defining managerial objectives before we start to communicate. So what is the level of compromise that you would agree to? And also, what is the optimal balance? How do you like it to look like? What do you like it to look like? Maybe is a beginning. And I understand that this is an individual question, but also, there are some company policies. I understand that. But so there will be some compromise for sure. Yeah.
For sure, one key suggestion always will be engage employees and listen to their expectations before you decide to go one way or the other right away, right? So having them being part of the solution, understanding your end objectives. Again, collaboration, innovation, communication, information sharing. So how do you achieve those objectives? And the employees being part of the solution will help you guarantee, I won't say happiness, but engagement, hopefully, right?
Mm-hmm. And also, like to Chris mentioned about it, Roxanne mentioned about it, like young generations are more tech savvy, so communicating through different or new apps, or those or project management tools is easier for them. Whereas maybe my generation, I mean, including myself, my attention span is very short when it comes to using those, so any experience, any success story about this?
Yeah. So if I can say, what I've found is we have a very many people in my current company that are new to the workforce, that's how I like to say it, and what they're losing out on potentially by not being in office is the wonderful things that happen in live, the learning, the collaboration, also understanding the norms of how one works in an office. And I did find that when a couple of years ago when the pandemic started, when I had co-op students come in, that was one of the things that we couldn't really teach them are those things that are not necessarily written in a handbook. So it's the learning and that collaboration and that understanding practices and norms by not just having to read about it, but by seeing it and experience it, that many people who are new to the workforce are missing out on.
That's great. I mean, in a few organizations, we created, as Flow Coachings, we created mentoring and reverse mentoring programs to create such a collaboration, and they worked very effectively too. So to your point about collaboration,
Yeah.
Roxanne. So can we bring the next question? Lynn. Hi, Lynn. Where managers don't have the discretion to permit work from home days outside of a corporate mandate schedule. I think there's a second part of the question. What are some other actions you are seeing managers implement that may have had a positive impact? So, Chris, do you have anything to?
Yeah, I do. So this actually describes the environment I work in, where they're mandated 2 days a week in the office and then a third day that's flexible. And one of the things our managers do have the ability to do is time shift on the days that are in office. So there's core hours where you must be in the office. You must be here 8 hours, and it must be a core between 10 and 3. You can shift either way. You can come in earlier and leave at 3. You can come in at 10 and leave later. So they have the ability to do that. The other thing that our managers are doing is, we talked about creating experiences where people want to be in the office, that the manager's job has now become creating those experiences, why people actually want to be here and working on the team on those days. So we tend to hold more events, more in-person meetings. You mentioned mentoring sessions. So where we do have associates that are in a mentoring program, we make sure that happens on those days. We pack as managers and as leaders of the organization as much excitement, as many events, as much learning as we possibly can into those 2 mandatory days. That's on us as a leadership team, but also each of the managers to figure out how they're actually going to attract people in and give them a reason to really want to be there on those 2 days that are mandatory in the office.
Yeah.
Wonderful. anyone would like to add? Roxanne, anything that you would like to add to this? Since
It's a great point that I think I've seen some people say, well, give me a reason to want to come into the office. And how can we make the office an attractive place without it being, end up being a three-ring circus and entertainment? It's about creating that place of comfort, that place where they're feeling accepted, a place that is really enjoyable to come into, allowing those interactions to happen, and not going in necessarily to cubicles, but allowing that collaboration. So it's really about enabling a better way of working, and it reflects very strongly on the corporate culture and what that organization is willing to create. It's about having social hours that was spoken about earlier, that we are in the same place and we can have that downtime and really feel like we're part of the group. It's that feeling of belonging that is so important to so many people and is such an attraction, whether you're introvert or extrovert, to get together once again.
And if I can add, if, for example, that happens when you are in a manufacturing environment, but if you're a leader and you are doors closed in an office, you are missing a lot of interactions. So my recommendation is walk the floors, be present, connect with people, have time to smile and do eye contact, right? So you will feel a lot of what's going on, what's the work environment, what is people thinking, and you will get a lot of interactions and ideas, and how the business is doing anyways, right? So be sure that when you are in the office, you're present and you're close to people, really.
I can confirm that in coaching clients and managers of managers that I coach, that they are finding success on the hybrid days. They're scheduling their one-on-ones for those days. They're scheduling their group meetings. They're having lunch and learns. They are doing things to engage employees while they're in the office. And they're making sure they're having FaceTime, so that if they're in a hybrid model, the days that they're not there is the days that they're, nose down getting their work done. But on the days where the team is in, it's really about team building, engagement, and sharing those experiences together to be able to collaborate.
Awesome.
wonderful. Thank you, Candy. And the next question is from Gary. Hi, Gary. Hi, Carol. And so, in my coaching of people who are being called back into the office, most of the resentment is coming from management's failure to communicate good reasons for the return, aside from keeping an eye on staff. How can management create, if not a compelling, at least a non-offensive rationale to get the returning workers on site? That's a great question. And it's very similar to what Roxanne, you shared, like, give me a reason to come back to the office. I mean, speaking from a motivational perspective, like, the question that comes to my mind, how do you make people want to come to the office, want to go to the office? Like, really want to see the people there, really want to engage.
I have clients that want to be in the office. They do crave the belonging. They do crave the routine. Um, and this is generational. I have, like Roxanne said, new college graduate, university graduates who are just starting out and don't know what they don't know, and are looking for that mentorship, and they have problems getting that remotely. So they want to be in the office. But at the same time, you know, um, a non-offensive rationale really is, I think it comes back to the person going into the office. What makes you want to work for your company? What is there that, you know, is this the company for you? Um, whether you have a choice or not to go back, and really, um, I kind of look at it as the employer is the one who, there's an exchange here. You exchange your work and they give you compensation.
So it's a
So
contract.
it's a contract. That's
Mhm.
right.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like talking back to our parents. There is a level of respect and there is also a level of perhaps compromise. So it's really I think that some companies have done a really great job with change management, and that's what this is really. People are afraid of change. We've had a lot of change in the past couple of few years that we weren't prepared for. So now, as we were able to take some time to prepare to make changes, it really comes down to a lot of really good change management techniques. And like
Yes,
Monica was saying before, if you have people involved, you're more likely to have better buy in.
correct.
So it's really working through that.
Mhm, mhm. A
Yeah.
question that, yeah, sorry. A question that comes to me listening to you is like, I know we communicate through like, some company portals and, like emails, and there's a message revealed to everyone. Like, but what if there are ways of one-to-one communication where we can tailor our messages? And the rationale behind calling people back, because everyone is different. So that would add extra workload. I'm aware of that. But what would that look like, Roxanne? What do you say?
It's very interesting because I think we're going kind of back to the why. Why is it that you should come in, and even looking at the last question, keeping an eye on people. That's a very physical thing. You're able to see someone, and it's really, how do we make sure that people understand what the best way to collaborate is, what the best way we can support, and it's also it's important for senior management to support the managers, frontline managers, to really understand, try to understand their employee, what their motivation is, and also how to manage. So it's not just a physical thing. Oh, I can see you, but it's monitoring the work and the concern about making not having the work done or not trusting employees. It's really a lot on the managers to manage effectively and to ensure that the work is getting done. So I do think that that really helps, is to enable managers and to educate managers on how to work best with people around the productivity aspect, as well as the engagement and the other aspects. There is a lot on a manager's shoulders.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like I always see this, like, even in and through our, like, during our managerial skills workshops and programs, is like what sometimes we forget, like, is we have this assumption that everything is managers' responsibility. Their impact is high because they're people managers, right? But there is a reciprocity in workplace relationships. So how do you then build trust and maintain trust? Because keeping an eye on stuff means, like, literally, there is a trust issue. That might be an assumption, but so that's a question that comes to my mind. But also, like, so there is a recipient of that communication, like it's a two-way, or some many times multiple ways communication. So how do you help everyone that they have a say and they have a part in that relationship,
Yes. Yeah.
and speak back and express their emotions, and develop the skills to debate, right? um, in a safe space. So if you ask me, the first thing is to create that safe space for everyone, to be inclusive. And how do you do it? Trust comes to my mind, like building, trying, giving different, people the space to express their emotions, and maybe even just, point out like, how do you feel about coming back is a question. And how can I support you? Like, is a question that a manager can ask. And also, let's go vulnerable. Let's get vulnerable. How can you support me in this difficult task? A question that manager can ask, right? Because a lot of times they forget that there's a reciprocity. Like, I have a say in this too, right? So if there is a safe space, of course, if there is no safe space, then forget about all of this that we discussed here. So then the question is, how can you create that safe and inclusive and brave space? Maybe.
Yeah.
these
I
things.
see it with my managers creating psychological safety in their one-on-ones, setting clear expectations, and being open to productive conflict.
That's very good. It's very good. And yeah, we have one more question, maybe two more questions. Yeah. Have you experienced any difference in team dynamics and overall productivity when employees work from home? I think we discussed this. I feel like we covered this. And there's one more question. Can you bring Shaida's questions, please? There's one more question. Yeah, I see. What are some tools to check their performance for remote employees? Which also is almost like a follow-up question on Gerald's, question, because keeping an eye means that maybe the performance review tools or that collaboration needs to be enhanced in that, environment. So are we aware of more innovative products and tools for performance management? Monica,
There's
nodding.
sorry.
Sorry.
I feel that agreeing on goals upfront and deliverables and continuous coaching and feedback throughout the year is critical. It was before the pandemic and before hybrid work or remote work was here. Now is even more prevalent. So understanding that we know what we expect for you as deliverables is very critical. But a constant touch point, monthly conversations are critical. Instead of waiting for the mid-year review and it's like, oh, surprise, you're not delivering, right? Or your objective has changed because we removed the budget, for example. So it's an ongoing conversation, open and transparent, and it's both sides, right? What support do I require from my leader to be effective on my work? And how am I progressing towards those objectives? So the managers need to sit down and agree those things and constantly be able to have checkpoints. So we ensure that we all are engaged and really delivering, right? Really, employees that feel that they're performing feel the most engaged. We all want to do a good job. So having a manager that is supportive in that sense is a critical factor for engagement.
Thank you, Monica. I would like to remind again that, employees and team members also have a say in this. And please just, let your managers, let your peers, let the upper management team, how you would like to engage. Just, bring up those conversations, open up those conversations. And there are still companies who are not providing any coaching and mentoring service to their employees. And there are a lot of managers who are lacking communication skills and coaching skills. They don't coach, they don't mentor their employees. So what I heard from you, Monica, is like creating those touch points, like regular touch points. I just had a recent conversation with one of my clients. They just had a performance review and manager said, I don't trust you. And it was a shock into the system of this employee. So don't wait. Just, provide timely feedback is another tool. Anything that you would like to add to this, Chris?
No, I would add, I think the tool is dialogue. The tool is arming your managers with coaching skills. The tool is in not only accepting, but encouraging frequent feedback in both directions. Sometimes when I see the word tool on managing productivity. We've all heard the stories of logging keystrokes, watching associates in front of the camera. Those things to me erode trust. What is going to build trust is arming your managers with the tools and abilities to enter into dialogue with their associates in a supportive way.
Wonderful. Sorry, Candy, did I?
It's okay.
I'm
It's
very
okay.
sorry.
It's okay. What I'm seeing is there's a lot of software being used to track project management, not to track keystrokes or that sort of thing, but allowing people to set goals, having clear expectations, having more frequent one-on-ones, and arming middle managers with ability to manage down and to manage up, and teaching individual contributors to be able to manage up, ask for feedback, ask for what they need. This is, and sometimes for individual contributors to really be in charge of their own career path, for taking some responsibility on your own, not just your employer, for your movement. So I coach a lot around that, goals, milestones, the ability to manage up and down, and really managers having more agenda focused one-on-ones.
Nice. Thank you, Candy.
Yeah, the tools are great, the Monday.com, the spreadsheets and so on, but it's the conversations that are had around those tools. I'm a huge fan of one-to-ones and scheduled, whether you need them or not. I like weekly one-to-ones. And sometimes it's, we just spoke yesterday, so we can, and we had a long one-to-one the week before, so we're fine. But it's creating that space where manager can become coach, and where the employee can also give feedback, and also picking up on where the manager can be vulnerable. So the manager asking, am I giving you enough? Am I doing too much? Do you need me to do more? What else can I do? Is there something that you need me to hear? And asking those tough questions. It's almost like a reverse of it, but coaching that employee along and helping them keep their eye on the goal, which is, why are we doing this project? What is the outcome? What is the value of this? What's it going to do for you in terms of your career and your image? So it's those, to me, as a manager, that's the most valuable tool, is the one-to-one. So when you have the productivity, and if, I'm a big believer, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it, and you can manage different ways, quantitatively and qualitatively, but really about having those open and honest discussions on a regular basis, where the coaching happens and where the listening happens, which is one of the coach's best tools, is how well they listen.
Listening is so important, so crucial, right? Like, developing that capacity across the organization, I believe, not only for managers, but for everyone, is essential.
I agree.
We have one last question, I think. So how would you coach and mentor a manager like myself with a remote team overseas? And also they're very different. So I understand that team members are very different. I think we touched base to some of those, like creating like some touch points, like, having scheduling one-to-ones, creating some celebratory events, like bringing team members together. What else? Project management tools, like what else?
Asking many questions, asking what they need, right? Every person might be different. Even if they're all from the same generation, every individual, it's a complex human being, and their motivations might be different. So don't be afraid to ask questions, and what support they need from you as a manager, I think.
And also ask for help as a manager. Get vulnerable. Admit that you need also help from them. You need to be supported as well. I'm a big fan of, like, involving my team in from the very beginning, to become part of whatever we're working on. So ask for help, ask for support from them. You can discuss this openly also. You can say, like, you can bring them together and you can say, how do we do this together at our best capacity?
Yes.
And then transparency also comes, and being authentic,
Also, recognizing cultural differences and talking about them and asking how they would like things to be different. I coach people from around the world, and what we do here in North America is often very different from what they're doing in their cultures and the language used. So it's really important to acknowledge that.
Which brings up the having an open and authentic conversation around values, cultural norms, and beliefs, and openly asking each other, is this okay? So checking in with them very often. So I am just, looking at the clock and realizing that another wonderful session has passed. I would like to thank all of my guests for being here, for sharing your wisdom with us and with our audience. And until next time, everyone, be well, stay safe, and be in the flow. And thank you, my guests. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Wonderful.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.